In the small, quiet town of Brooksville, the afternoon sun cast long shadows over rows of modest houses. On the porch of one of these homes sat John Harris, a 93-year-old who had witnessed more than the town's residents could ever imagine. His wrinkled hands were steady as he sipped his coffee, his eyes on the distant horizon. The peaceful scene was broken by the rumbling sound of engines, a sound John had come to recognize over the past few weeks. It was the bikers again. Rex, the leader of the gang, swaggered up onto John's lawn, his leather jacket and tattoos adding to his intimidating presence. The gang members parked their bikes on the grass, laughing as if the yard was their personal hangout. Well, look who's enjoying his afternoon," Rex sneered, hopping off his bike. John didn't respond, merely observing the gang's antics with his usual calm. This wasn't the first time they had harassed him, and the bikers clearly didn't expect any resistance. "What's the matter, old man? Cat got your tongue?" Rex sneered, stepping forward and knocking the coffee cup from John's hands. John's gaze fell to the shattered cup, then slowly lifted back to meet Rex's eyes. "You've had your fun. Now leave," John said firmly. Rex laughed, leaning in mockingly. "And what are you going to do about it? Call the cops? I'd be back on the street before you even hung up." "No, I'm not calling the cops," John replied quietly, pulling out an old flip phone. He dialed a single number as Rex laughed. "Who's on the other end? The retirement home?" But John ignored him, waiting as the phone rang. Rex's amusement wavered as he noticed John's steady demeanor and unshaken resolve. Just then, a voice answered on the other end. "Ethan, it's time," John said simply. "Initiate the protocol." Rex's mocking grin faded, replaced by uncertainty. "Protocol? What kind of game are you playing, old man?" But John offered no explanation, only a cold stare. "You'll find out soon enough," he replied. Annoyed, Rex knocked the phone from John's hand, but John simply turned and walked back inside, leaving Rex standing there, unsure of himself. Later that night, as Rex and his gang were boasting about their next plans, his phone buzzed with an unexpected notification. His bank account had been frozen, flagged for suspicious activity. One by one, the other gang members began to receive similar alerts, their accounts blocked, credit cards frozen, and payments declined. It seemed their financial lives were being torn down, piece by piece. Meanwhile, back in his living room, John watched the effects of his call play out on his computer screen. His grandson, Ethan, had everything in place, feeding updates in real time. "They're starting to feel it," Ethan's voice crackled through the speaker. "Their accounts are locked, and I've flagged them across every financial institution we could." The bikers were only beginning to understand that their lives had just been dismantled by a 93-year-old man and his tech-savvy grandson who'd had enough of being pushed around. In the quiet town of Brooksville, John Harris sat on his porch, his expression calm yet resolved. At 93, he was no ordinary elderly man. He had a plan in motion to dismantle the gang that had terrorized him for weeks. Thanks to his tech-savvy grandson Ethan, John had already struck the first blow by freezing the accounts of Rex and his gang, rendering them powerless financially. Ethan reported proudly, "By tomorrow, they won't even be able to buy coffee without a red flag." John nodded, but his mind was set on more. "Good work, Ethan, but we're not done. This is only the beginning." John was determined to follow through. Using contacts from his military days, he began gathering deeper intelligence on the gang. What Ethan had discovered was only the surface. Rex's gang was tied to organized crime at a high level. Meanwhile, the next morning, Rex woke to complete chaos. Members of his gang were being arrested left and right for outstanding warrants, and the rest were scrambling as their bank accounts froze mysteriously. Rex slammed his fist on the table, fuming. This has to be that old man. Desperate for answers, Rex gathered his gang, ready to pay John a visit. But they didn't get far. As they prepared to leave, a fleet of unmarked cars appeared, with FBI agents stepping out, badges raised. "FBI, stay where you are," shouted one agent. Rex froze as he was handcuffed and led away, realizing with shock that he had been outsmarted by the very man he'd underestimated. John's calm warning from before now echoed in his mind. "You're all going to regret this." Watching from his porch, John observed the unmarked cars driving by. He knew this was far from over. Rex and his gang were only a small piece of the puzzle. The real threat lay with those higher up in the criminal world. As if on cue, his phone rang. It was Ethan. "They've got Rex in custody, Grandpa," he confirmed. John's expression was steely. "Good, but there's more to be done. I want every one of their connections traced back to the source." Ethan's fingers flew across the keyboard. "I'm on it," he said, scanning financial records and linking the gang to a network of criminal enterprises. John nodded approvingly, but his focus was already shifting to the next stage. Later that evening, he sat in his study, gazing at an old photograph of himself with his military comrades. These men had fought beside him and trusted him with their lives. Now, even decades later, he could still call on some of them. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years. After a few rings, a familiar voice answered. "John Harris, it's been a long time." John replied, "Too long, McCaffrey. I need a favor." McCaffrey, his old commanding officer, chuckled. "What kind of favor are we talking about?" John's tone was resolute. "The kind that shuts down a criminal syndicate." McCaffrey, sensing the seriousness in John's voice, replied, "Send me what you've got, and I'll rally the right people. We'll make sure this is the end of their operations." With McCaffrey's influence, John knew he now had the means to dismantle not only Rex's gang, but the entire syndicate backing them. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, in a sleek office, Victor Lang, a powerful crime lord, reviewed reports on recent arrests and financial disruptions tied to Rex's crew. His influence spanned every major illegal enterprise, and such attention was disastrous for his operations. It was clear that someone had launched a calculated strike against him, and Victor was not about to let it go unpunished. Picking up his phone, he made a call. "We have a situation. I need to know who's behind this, and I want them dealt with, discreetly." Back in Brooksville, life began to settle down. With Rex and his gang in custody, the townspeople felt a newfound sense of peace. But John knew better. The real battle was yet to come. One afternoon, as he sat on his porch, he couldn't shake the feeling that the coming days would test every bit of resolve he and his allies had. Ethan arrived at his grandfather's porch with a sense of urgency, carrying his laptop and some serious updates. "Grandpa, you've got to see this," he said, setting the device on the porch table. As John watched, Ethan opened a series of files uncovering a complex network of bank transfers, hidden accounts, and ghost companies. This wasn't just Rex's gang anymore. What they'd stumbled on went much further up the chain. "I traced everything back to a man named Victor Lang," Ethan explained. "He's behind all of it. Drug trafficking, arms dealing, you name it. Rex and his gang are just pawns in his operation." John's face darkened. "Victor Lang," he murmured, the name ringing a distant bell. "I've heard of him. He's dangerous." Ethan nodded gravely. "I froze what accounts I could, but Lang has layers of protection. We'll need more than hacking to take him down." John knew that stopping Lang would require careful strategy and backup. "We're going to need McCaffrey's help," John replied. He quickly called his old ally, McCaffrey, sharing what they had uncovered. True to his word, McCaffrey had already mobilized resources. Within hours, a special task force was coming together, but McCaffrey issued a warning. "Lang's different, John. He's sharp, ruthless. If we go after him, there's no turning back." John's jaw was set. "I understand, but we're in too deep to quit now." McCaffrey agreed, but cautioned John to keep a low profile. If Lang got wind of their involvement, there would be severe consequences. As the days turned into weeks, John, Ethan, and McCaffrey worked tirelessly to build a solid case against Lang and his criminal empire. The FBI began moving in, systematically targeting key players. However, Lang was no fool. He sensed the tightening net and became more unpredictable. One night, as Ethan monitored digital channels, he intercepted an encrypted message to one of Lang's lieutenants. Ethan's stomach dropped as he showed his grandfather. "They know it's you, Grandpa. Lang's ordered a hit. They're coming." John stayed calm, though he felt the weight of the situation settle over him. This was no longer about strategy. This had become personal. Lang's men were ruthless and would stop at nothing. "Then we'll be ready," John replied, his voice unwavering. As night fell, John secured the house, setting up hidden cameras, alarms, and improvised traps. Years of military training came flooding back, and despite his age, he moved with precision and focus. "Are we really prepared for this?" Ethan asked nervously. John's answer was simple. "We don't have a choice. Lang's men have underestimated us." Soon, they heard the low rumble of engines in the distance. The bikers were approaching, their headlights illuminating the edges of John's property. Lang had sent his best, hardened criminals with no hesitation to follow through on the hit. As the bikers dismounted and approached, confident of an easy victory, John set off the first alarm. The blaring sound disoriented the intruders, followed by bright security lights flooding the yard, throwing them off balance. "Stay low," John whispered to Ethan, guiding him to a secure spot. Caught off guard, the bikers stumbled into the traps John had laid. Two of them were instantly immobilized, snared by cleverly set lines that held them in place. Their leader, a burly man known as Snake, barked orders to his men and forced his way onto the porch with a crowbar. But as he stepped inside, he found himself face to face with John, who held a shotgun at the ready, aimed straight at Snake. "This is your last chance," John said coldly, "to walk away while you still can." John's gaze was steady as he faced down Snake, who sneered, unfazed. "Think you can handle me, old man?" Snake taunted. John's eyes remained calm. "I've seen worse," he replied. Snake lunged, but John was ready. With expert timing, he fired a warning shot that grazed Snake's shoulder, sending him reeling back, clutching his wound in shock. Snake cursed under his breath, but before he could react further, the night lit up with flashing lights as unmarked cars sped onto the property. McCaffrey had sent backup right on time, and federal agents moved in, guns drawn, securing the area in a matter of minutes. Lang's men were completely unprepared for the coordinated assault. One by one, the bikers were apprehended and handcuffed, loaded into waiting vehicles. Snake, still gripping his shoulder, glared at John as agents led him away. "You'll regret this," he snarled, but John stood resolute, watching as the last of the gang members were taken off the property. He knew the real threat was still out there. Snake was only a pawn, and Victor Lang remained the true danger. As calm returned, McCaffrey approached John with an approving smile. "Still got it, I see," he said, clapping John on the back. "Some things never change," John replied, though his expression remained serious. "But Lang's still out there and he's not going to back down." McCaffrey nodded. "We're closing in on him, seizing assets, dismantling his network. But he's a slippery one." That evening, as John and Ethan processed the raid, a temporary calm settled over them. Ethan's admiration for his grandfather was clear. "How did you know what to do?" he asked. John chuckled softly. "Just experience," he replied, "and a lot of it." But suddenly, Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked at it, his face going pale. "What is it?" John asked, sensing the change. Ethan held up his phone, revealing a message from an unknown number. "I'm coming." John took a deep breath, unfazed. He had expected Lang to retaliate. "Let's prepare," he said calmly, already strategizing. Ethan's fingers flew across his keyboard. "I'll trace it. Maybe we can find out where Lang is holed up." John nodded. "Good. Stay focused. He'll be more dangerous than ever now." Hours later, Ethan's computer beeped, and he turned to his grandfather with a glint of triumph. "Got him. Lang's hiding out in an old warehouse on the edge of town. It's heavily guarded, but if we act fast, we can take him down." John's face hardened. "Then let's finish this." McCaffrey's team quickly mobilized. As the vehicles approached the warehouse, John rode alongside McCaffrey. This was it, the final confrontation. They moved in silently, surrounding the building, the tension building with each step. Inside, Lang's men patrolled, oblivious to the ambush about to hit them. With a nod to McCaffrey, John moved forward, his instincts sharp as ever. The team burst into the warehouse, catching Lang's men by surprise. A firefight erupted, with bullets tearing through the darkened space. Amid the chaos, John moved with surprising agility, pushing deeper into the warehouse, his eyes fixed on reaching Lang. Finally, he found Lang in a secluded room, surrounded by papers and monitors. Lang didn't seem surprised to see him. "John Harris," he sneered, "the man who just doesn't know when to quit." John leveled his shotgun, steady and focused. "It's over, Lang. Your empire is done." Lang chuckled, his eyes cold. "You think it ends here? There will always be others, you know." But as Lang reached for a gun, John fired, ending it with one precise shot. With Lang's fall, the air was filled with a sense of relief. The federal agents rounded up the remaining men, securing every corner of Lang's crumbling empire. Outside, McCaffrey clapped John on the back once more. "You saved lives today," he said, respect evident in his voice. "Couldn't have done it alone. John replied with a faint smile. As the sun rose, bathing the scene in warm light, John and Ethan walked side by side, finally able to breathe. Back on the porch where it all began, John settled into his chair with Ethan beside him. They had faced down danger together, and as John looked out at the horizon, he knew that while this battle was won, there would always be others. But for now, that was enough. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more thrilling and inspiring tales. Share this video with your friends and family, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. And remember, sometimes all it takes is one phone call to change everything.